Welcome to the Aesthetics Today podcast, the premier platform where we explore the ever-evolving landscape of aesthetic treatments, regenerative medicine, and cutting-edge beauty products and technology.
Hello, and welcome to the Aesthetics Today podcast. I'm your host, Tabs, and today we have a truly special guest, Dr. Askari Townsend. Dr. Askari is a highly experienced aesthetic doctor, the founder and medical director of the award-winning Askinology clinic in London, and a leading educator in the field of non-surgical treatments. With nearly 2 decades in aesthetics and a background in surgery, Dr. Askari has trained countless practitioners, worked with top brands like Sculptra and 𝐚𝐿𝐴, and even developed Collumns, a cutting-edge clinic management software designed to revolutionize the way aesthetic clinics operate. Today, we'll be diving into his incredible journey from the NHS to aesthetics, how he's shaping the future of the industry, and what it really takes to achieve subtle, natural results that stand the test of time. Whether you are an aesthetics professional or someone considering treatment, this episode is packed with valuable insights and you won't want to miss. Today's episode was sponsored by Digital Aesthetics, a leading marketing agency in aesthetics and health. Welcome, Dr. Askari.
Thank you, Tabs. Thanks for having me.
You started your career in surgery before moving to aesthetics. What prompted you to make the change?
Well, Tabs, I was always interested in bodies and faces. And at one point, I thought plastic surgery was going to be the specialty that I would enter. But as time went on in my career in the NHS, I think I just realized that the NHS wasn't going to be the employer for me for the rest of my life. The NHS has great things about it, but it also has some difficulties. And to be honest with you, I just figured that as I grew up and had children and the like, I'd want to spend time with my family, and watching my bosses around me who were trauma surgeons, it didn't seem to me that those two things were compatible. At the same time, I was learning how to inject Botox and was really enjoying doing that for my friends and family. And as people were demanding my services more and more frequently, it seemed a straightforward choice when I started to drift from the idea of spending my entire career in the NHS.
Oh, wow. No, that's interesting. I want to touch on the difficulties. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced when transitioning from NHS to private aesthetics?
I always think the transition for anyone trying to move from a stable, well-paying job into something that isn't guaranteed is always going to be difficult. You get used to steady income, and it's good income, and you've got costs. You have a mortgage to pay perhaps, or a family to look after. So making that leap, I think, is always difficult for everyone. And for me, yeah, it was tough. I didn't know what I was going to get into. Was I going to succeed? Was I going to have lots of patients right away? Well, the answer to the first question, yes, you're going to succeed if you keep at it. The answer to the second question, was I going to have patients right away? Absolutely not. It takes a long time to build a successful practice. So for me, actually, it was more of the push, I think. I'd made my decision to leave the NHS. And once I'd made that decision, that was the biggest thing for me. From then onwards, it was really just about where was I going to go, how was I going to do it, etc. And in that transition period, I would recommend anyone to think about this advice. Keep some income coming in so that you can support yourself whilst your new business is growing. So for some time, I did shifts in the local emergency departments, etc., as a locum doctor, and that's how I managed to sustain myself as I transitioned from the NHS to 100% in aesthetics.
Yes, no, and change is good in terms of evolving. You need to sometimes take that leap of faith. Dr. Askari, how has the aesthetics industry evolved since you started in 2006?
Wow, I mean, I've been in the industry for nearly 20 years now, and there have been massive changes in all sorts of different ways. Let's think about training. Training is so much more accessible. There's so much more choice. The quality of training is so much higher. I mean, when I went and did my first Botox training course, I think it was a half-day course. At the most, it was a full day. I think there was one model that we injected, and that was it. And then off we went to start practicing on our friends and family. So huge difference in training. What about the products? In those days, there were not many products to choose from. And now there's a huge explosion of all the different types of products you can use from different brands. Think about technology. In those days, I'm not even sure iPhones were around. So even taking photos or videos on a device was very different, let alone all of the different apps and ways that we interact with our patients now. And I know we're going to talk about technology later. I guess the other thing that I think about as somebody who's been in the industry for some time is that the sheer number of people coming into this industry trying to make successful businesses has really skyrocketed. And I think for anyone looking to come into the industry now, one of the things they really need to think about is what do they need to do to stand out from the huge amount of competition that's out there. That's, I think, a really big thing to be thinking about right now, because certainly in the UK and in London, I think the area is really pretty saturated.
Yes, yes. No, London is indeed saturated. You've said that you've spent years training and mentoring others. What do you think makes them great aesthetics practitioners now that they've been assisted by you?
Sorry, would you mind just repeating the question? I wasn't quite sure.
Oh, the question is, you've spent years training and mentoring others. What do you think makes them a great aesthetic practitioner now?
The people that I trained, what makes
Yeah.
them great? Okay. Well, I'd love to think that all the people I've trained are great practitioners. I'm sure they are. I think as a trainer, I was really keen to ensure that I divulged all of my tips and tricks that I've been accumulating over the years that I've been practicing. Certainly, when I went and received training in my earlier years, I really felt that the trainers were always holding back. You would ask a specific question about a specific scenario, and then there would be a really vague answer, because people were still trying to hold on to their magic, their tips and tricks. And it seems to me that if you're training and someone's paying you for that training, you should be enabling that trainee to have all the tools at their disposal to be the best practitioner they could be. So that really upset me in those early years. I suspect things are different now. Like I say, training has really moved on, and now you've got the internet and all the social media apps that can share knowledge. So I think that would have been the difference when I was training people. They really got to see everything that I had to offer. I didn't hold anything back. I also encouraged people to think about strategies and think about assessing patients as individuals rather than painting by numbers. And one of the things that's worried me at certain times over the last 20 years or so are some programs that go down a route of painting by numbers. And the problem with that is that everyone's different, right? Are you young, old, male, female? What ethnicity are you, etc.? Everyone's different. So the idea that we can just go to a certain place and inject a certain amount there and then go to the next place, it works on a certain level. And as a basic training technique, I think it's fantastic. But as time moves on, individuals really need to develop the art of assessment and varying their treatments. So they really are truly doing bespoke treatments for each individual that they come in front of.
Oh, okay, now that's very insightful, Dr. Askari. Let's talk about Askinology. Askinology has won multiple awards. What sets it apart from other aesthetic clinics?
Well, I think before I opened Askinology, I worked for a large national chain of clinics. At that time, it was the largest chain in the UK. And it really taught me a lot about the delivery of services, customer service, profitability, etc. And business, I think, is always there's always a tension between delivering great service and making money. Yes, we want to make money, but we want to deliver a great service. And the question is, well, how much money do you want to make, and what are you going to sacrifice for that? And so when I went to Askinology, I was really clear in my mind that service was going to come first. And now this next bit, I don't know, might sound controversial amongst the medical community, but if I had to choose between delivering an amazing 10 out of 10 treatment, but not delivering a great experience for my patient, I would actually prefer to deliver an 8.5 treatment, but give them an amazing experience. Because when they come into my clinic, it's not just the treatment they're coming for. It's everything from the welcome they get at the front desk, the smell of the place, what does it look like, how does it feel, all the way through to then having the treatment. And of course, that's really important. And of course, we're always going to deliver the best treatments that we can. I'm not going to say we won't. But all I'm trying to say is that the experience is far more than just the treatment. And I tell my staff on a regular basis that we need to focus on amazing experiences. And if we can do that, then the money and the profitability and the success will follow. And I think sticking to that has been our secret. And here we are nearly 10 years later. We've got great reviews. We average 4.8 out of 5 on Google reviews. And as we all know, Google reviews, anyone can go and say anything they want on there. So you'll get your 1 stars. And so to maintain a 4.8 after 10 years makes me very proud. And I think it says something about the way that we deliver our treatments, rather than just focusing on the individual treatments themselves.
Oh, that's very insightful. Speaking of treatments, what are the most popular treatments that patients are currently asking for right now?
You know, throughout my entire career in aesthetics, it's always been the same. It's certainly in my practices, injectable treatments, toxins and fillers. Why? Because the level of satisfaction is super high. If you come into my clinic today and you ask me for a toxin treatment, I'm 100% sure that I can give you a great result. And I'm almost 100% sure that you're going to love what I do for you. And what I can do for you with that toxin is something that you can't get anywhere else so easily and quickly. You could have spent thousands on skincare and different technologies and the like. And unless you're going to go to, carbon dioxide laser resurfacing or something like that, the idea that you can nip into my clinic and within 15 minutes be back out on the streets looking like you haven't had anything done at all, and then 10 days, 2 weeks later be looking so much fresher, is something that nothing else can deliver. So yeah, in my practice, toxin and dermal filler has always been the most popular. And I'm pretty sure it's going to continue to be the most popular until I pass away and depart this industry.
How do you balance offering subtle, natural results while ensuring patient satisfaction?
I'm quite fortunate in that I've worked in lots of different parts of the country and also different parts of London. And different parts of London deliver you very different types of customers, different types of patients. So the Harley Street patient I found was often very international, quite wealthy, and quite keen to absolve themselves of responsibility of choosing treatments. I often felt, not always, and I am generalizing, but generally, I felt that the patients I had over that side of London wanted me to tell them what to have done. And on one hand, you might say that that's really easy because you can just get on and, they'll just buy whatever you have to give them. But actually on the other side, it's quite tough because people need to understand the pros and cons of having treatment. And I felt that there was a reluctance to really get into the pros and cons. It was really just people wanted to pay their money and me do my thing. Over in the city, which is where Askinology is, our patients are quite different. They are professional, highly skilled, very critical. They understand information and processing of that information, and they understand risk. These patients come into my clinic. I talk to them, speak to them, understand what it is they want. And almost by default, they want natural results. To kind of come back to the core of your question. Everybody that I speak to in my clinic is actually worried that they're going to look overdone, frozen, their colleagues are going to notice. So in my part of the world, it's all about delivering treatments that are flying under the radar and just giving people a spring in their step, making them feel good, look as good as they can. And with the customers, the patients that I have there in the city, it's actually really easy because we have a conversation. I can give them the pros and cons, and they're very quick to understand what it is that they want, and they will choose They will understand the risks. They'll sign a consent form, and then we can go in together as a team. Whereas I felt that in other parts of the world, it wasn't that same kind of team approach to treatment. I'm not sure if I've actually answered your question at all, but hopefully it's...
You have, no, you have. Dr. Askari, you've spoken about offering gentler treatment accessible to all. Can you elaborate on what that means and how it benefits the patients?
Yeah, I think I've always been keen to offer treatments to all. And what I mean by that is making sure that we are as open and accessible as possible. So when I first came into this industry in the early 2000s, aesthetic clinics were often behind closed doors. Very rarely could you see inside. It was often that you would ring in advance, and then you would turn up to a door, somebody would buzz, open the door for you, or let you in. And I think there was some fear around that. And when I went to work for the large chain, I realized that some of our most popular clinics were the ones that were on high streets, had big windows, and you could see in and see that it wasn't threatening. So this was one of the things that I also focused on. The clinic I have now, Askinology, is in a really beautiful part of London called Leadenhall Market. Lots of tourists wandering around, lots of city workers going to and from lunch, etc. We've got a huge double-fronted building with big double-height windows. And so everybody walking by can look inside and they can see a smiling staff member ready to welcome you when you come in. And so there's this sense of I can nip in, I can ask a question, I can have a look at some product on the shelf. And in that way, I think we open up to everyone. And then as a reflection, also our website, I think, is very clear. We actually have our pricing on the website, and it's a very no-nonsense kind of menu. And I think that also makes it accessible because people aren't fearful to book an appointment, a consultation, and then worry that they're going to be told it's way out of their budget. So by putting all of this up front and center, with the big windows, with our messaging, with the pricing clear on the website, I think people can see what it's all about. And if they do come to see us, it increases the chance of us having a successful interaction and a conversion to treatment because people already kind of know what they're expecting when they come in. Final step when they come into the business is just to meet us one-on-one, human to human, and to see if they, have that last bit of trust that they can then say, yes, let's go forwards.
Okay, now that's very insightful. Dr. Askari, how has your role as a speaker and a trainer influenced your own practice?
Okay. In my mind, the training and the speaking and ambassador part of my work, or certainly in the past, has been very separate from my in-clinic work. I think it's often been about reputation and prestige and future patients or existing patients coming to my clinic and feeling that they're being looked after by an expert. If you can say or show that you are training other professionals, it kind of puts you on a pedestal almost. The inference is that you know more than those people. Now, whether that's true or not, that's something else. But the messaging is certainly that, and that can be really beneficial for your work in clinic. But in terms of how has training or speaking really changed my approach within clinic, I don't think it actually has, to be honest. I think one of the biggest things I learned from training others was it gave me a lot of confidence in my own work and reassured me that actually I felt that I was top flight because I saw a lot of other people injecting and some of them weren't great injectors. So to be able to see that can give you confidence and say, actually, do you know what? My techniques are good because I'm seeing a lot of other people inject, and now I can see where I sit in the landscape. I think last thing I would say about this is that aesthetics is often a very lonely specialty. We're often in a room on our own. If you're lucky, you'll have an assistant, but most of us are on our own. And we rarely get together and see how other people inject. Again, because like I said, people are secretive. They don't want to give away their tips and tricks. And so how do you ever know if what you're doing is any good, if you can't go and see the person down the road? And so the great thing about training is you do get this little sneak preview of what other people are doing around the country, and then you can truly understand where do you sit in the pecking order.
And with your experience in the aesthetics world, what do you think is the biggest mistake people make when choosing the right aesthetic practitioner?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake that people make when choosing a practitioner, I think that people these days do a lot of research, but their version of research, I think, may be a different version to mine. So the person with the most glamorous Instagram account isn't necessarily the best injector. I'm not a big fan of before and afters because we know that images can be manipulated. And I certainly see images that I think to myself don't quite look right. So the whole social media marketing space is one that I've never been that comfortable with in aesthetics, to be honest. And maybe it's just that I'm old and, I don't do social that much, but it just feels like it's not a good bedfellow with what we're doing in aesthetics. I think what people really need to be looking at are reviews, real life stories, real life recommendations. I think people should go and have consultations with more than one practitioner and sit in front of that practitioner and have a conversation human to human. Do they trust that practitioner? Is the practitioner talking sense? Do they seem comfortable in their surroundings? And then when they're ready to do treatment, starting off with something small. I personally, in my own business, I will not treat somebody in a really big way the very first time I've ever seen them. We're always going to start with something small. I want them to get a sense of how do I treat? What's my approach? Are they comfortable with me? Are they comfortable with my staff, my clinic? And once we've got that extra bit of trust, now we can start moving on to bigger treatments, more expensive treatments. I'm surprised at the number of people who come and see me and tell me that they spent £2,000 on the first visit that they had with a particular practitioner. And that doesn't sit so well with me. Now, I'm not trying to say that anybody's doing anything wrong in that. I'm just saying I think we expose ourselves a little when doing it that way.
Yes, no, and trust is very important when it comes to finding the right practitioner. And you're right, coming in person, speaking to the person in person, and not just going onto social media. So I get what
Yeah.
you are saying. Very important to build that trust. Um, have you ever changed your perspective on a treatment or a technique after all the years of practice?
Yeah, I certainly have. We talked about changes and technology and treatments, offerings, etc. over time. And you asked me a previous question, which I thought was going to be a different question. I thought you were going to ask about any kind of pitfalls or problems that I've had as a practitioner. And so I get a chance to answer that one now.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of change going on. And when I was younger and perhaps more arrogant and thought I was this kind of high flying surgical injector, I was keen to try all the new treatments. And as I've got older and wanted to sleep a little easier at night, I'm happy for the other young whippersnappers to go and try all the new treatments and see which ones truly work. So yeah, when threads came out, that they were super fancy and everybody was very excited, and we thought that we were going to be able to have almost mini facelift type results in what was dubbed to be a lunchtime procedure. And actually, I think pretty quickly we realized that it wasn't really a lunchtime procedure. Just because you can do something within an hour, that doesn't then mean that it's a lunchtime procedure. There are certain operations under general anesthetic that you can do in less than an hour, but they're not lunchtime procedures. The idea that you go straight back to work is nonsense. So I started doing threads, and I very quickly realized that they were far more impactful and kind of aggressive than I perhaps had initially realized. And that really hit home when I had a lady who came in, had a thread treatment, and then got off the couch and told me she was going to our Alton Towers, which is a theme park in the UK, with her family. And I couldn't believe it. And I couldn't persuade her not to go. And I'm not sure how her day panned out, but I can tell you that I suspect it was a difficult day for her. So, staying on threads. So I quickly learned that they weren't the kind of treatment that I thought they'd been when I'd been on the training course. Then I started getting my results back, and I realized that not everyone was getting reproducible results. And okay, maybe that was because my experience wasn't up there with that particular treatment. But even as I stuck with it and did more and more cases, for whatever reason, I personally was not able to get a good consistency of treatment result. And then we started to have the treatment failures. And then you've got to start thinking about, how do you placate those people who spent a lot of money on this fancy treatment that then doesn't seem to have delivered. So that was a lesson I learned over a period of months, actually, with that particular type of treatment. And that stuck with me forevermore, really, which is now that before I take on a new treatment, before I'm going to put my name and my reputation and my trust to a treatment, I really want to know that it works. It's not enough to listen to the rep or to watch the training video or see what they've put online about it. I want to see patients who have really gone through that treatment, not the patients that had it for free, so they could have before and after pictures taken, but real life patients who went to work, earned their hard-earned money, and then paid that money to a practitioner for a result. And unfortunately, as the years have rolled by, I don't see many new treatments that pass that test. That's like, the Askari test. If it passes that test, great, let's do it. But I'm still going to do it cautiously. But, sometimes it's the old stuff that does the best. I kicked this podcast off by saying injectables have always been the most popular thing in my practice, and no new treatment has knocked them off their pedestal yet.
Okay, Dr. Askari, let's speak about innovation in aesthetics, the creation of Collumns. You've worked with multiple clinic management software systems and found them lacking. What were the biggest frustrations that led you to create Collumns?
I think, the biggest frustration for me, over the years, I used 7 different software management solutions. And I think my biggest difficulty was not just the way the software worked. That was one big thing. The software didn't feel like the flow was one that was conducive to helping me run my business smoothly and quickly, particularly the patient flows. When a patient comes into my room, how do I want to use software? How do I want to be able to document injectable treatments, for example? Pen and paper is great. You can draw pictures and you can write your doses, etc. But in those days, when we went to digital software, it got quite cumbersome, quite slow in how we were documenting those treatments. So that was the first thing, software that just didn't seem to flow in the way that a practitioner wanted it to. The second big thing, and maybe even bigger, something I talked about earlier, was the experience. We all think we're great at injecting toxin, and that's fantastic. But are you delivering a great experience for your patient? Same kind of thing with software. You could have the best software in the world, but if you're not giving a great experience, and I'm really thinking about customer support, what happens when something goes wrong? What happens when people need help with a certain piece of your software? Are you there to help them, support them, and help with the experience? Because if you don't support them, the person who really suffers is the patient, because the software's not working right, the patient isn't getting what they need. And so with Collumns, those are the 2 really big things I wanted to address. Make sure that we're building software that is addressing the needs of real life practitioners, not what I think they might need as somebody who sits in an office somewhere on the other side of the world as, doing a job as a software developer. So that was the first thing. And the second thing was making sure that we had software that would really support people. So I'm really proud, in the same way that I'm proud with my reviews and Askinology, I'm really proud with the response time that we have in terms of our software support. So we aim to get back to people within 2 minutes in terms of chat support. If it's getting over 5 minutes, I start feeling a little bit grumpy, because somebody might be in front of their patient at that moment, waiting on an answer with for a problem they had. So those are the 2 big things that I wanted to fix, and I'm really pleased to say that I think I have, and the clinics we have and practitioners we have using Collumns, I think agree that kind of support is something that we really excel in.
To add on to that, what is next for Collumns? Any exciting updates or features in the pipeline?
There certainly are. We've just recently launched our updates to our payment integration. So now that you can create direct debits directly from Collumns, or you can create memberships. I think this is something that's coming down the line. It's been getting more and more popular. the idea of a membership program where people pay a certain amount of money each month, and as they do that, they get treatments and discounts, etc., as time goes on. So that's now something that's integrated within Collumns, which is great. More and more people are using that. And the next thing for us is starting to work on a project to integrate lead management. And again, I know this isn't something that's completely new. We've all used lead management software, but the idea is, how do we get it within our software so that on a day-to-day basis, it works in the way that we expect it, rather than some lead management software that's just been kind of squashed together with your practice management software in a really kind of unhelpful, bulky way. So that's coming down the line. And the thing is, we're always innovating. Every week we're upgrading, fixing, improving. So watch this space. We will keep announcing our developments, but the next big one for us is going to be lead management.
Yes, and we will be on the lookout. So now we're on to the next segment, the future of aesthetics medicine. Dr. Askari, what trends do you see shaping the future of non-surgical aesthetics?
Okay, so this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because I've been asked this at various times over the years, and I've always given a fairly boring answer. But you know what? I think I've been proven right each time. So what do I think is happening in aesthetics? I think that technology continues to be a very dominant feature of aesthetics, as it is in lots of walks of life. We're seeing different imaging apps, for example, that are more and more advanced and fitting more and more into small portable devices. In other words, being able to use your iPhone to diagnose suspicious moles, or to look at blood flow through the face to avoid intravascular injection. So there's purely technological advances that are really powerful, and I think are going to make us safer and help us deliver better quality treatments. So that's the really positive side of things. And then there's the technology that tells us that it's an advancement, but actually isn't. It's the same technology, but in a different wrapping. And what do I mean by that? I think there are certain energy-based devices that are still on the market that tell us there's something totally new, but kind of the same thing I saw 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Maybe the claim is that the treatment's a bit more comfortable, or maybe the claim is that the results are 10% better in a different population. I'm not sure that I buy all of that, to be honest with you. Why? Well, we talked about the Askari test. I want to see those real patients, and I want to see what they're saying about it and what they're getting. And it seems to me that we just have in aesthetics some tried and tested modalities that give good results. They will be tweaked as time goes on. But you know what? My boring answer is, I don't imagine completely different treatments being offered in 5 or 10 years. My prediction is that in 5 or 10 years' time in my business, injectables are still going to be the top spot. Okay, maybe they'll be slightly more refined, but ultimately people will come into my clinic, they'll pay for their injectable treatments, and they'll leave and they'll be very happy. I'll have great results. But like I say, the real advances, I think, are going to be in those technology spaces. And of course, in software systems like the one, that we've just been talking about, Collumns. Yeah, apologies. I haven't got anything more exciting for you.
No, it's fine. You've had years of experience in the aesthetics world. If you could change one thing about this industry, what would it be?
I think I'll go, I've got certain themes that you'll hear me talk about again and again. And I think the thing that I'd love to change more is to inject more sharing and more honesty in what we're doing. And I don't use the word honesty to try and kind of use it as an insult. But, I talked about trainers that I came across years ago that would hold back tips and tricks because I guess they felt that if they gave away some of their secrets, their competitors might have a march on them. I personally don't see it that way. There's so many of us spread across the entire country. I think I'm a pretty good injector. And if I show you a little trick or tip, hopefully you'll take that, you'll do a better treatment for your patients. but you're not taking any patients from me. You are not a direct threat to me. And I think us sharing everything that we have to offer just means that we deliver better treatments across the board. I think it's, to hold something back and let somebody struggle with their perhaps not so good approach or technique. I don't think we're doing anybody any good by letting that person struggle or not advance as quickly as they could otherwise. So yeah, more sharing, more honest sharing. I think we've all been to conferences and asked somebody what they do in certain situations, and they give you the answer. And I think, really, do you really do that day to day in your clinic, or are you just saying that because it sounds like a cool, clever answer to give?
Dr. Askari, speaking of sharing, what advice would you give practitioners who would want to start in this field?
Okay, so if you're starting now, we talked about how much competition there is going on. The market, I think, is pretty saturated. So if you're interested in coming into aesthetics, I think the first thing is be clear what you're coming in for. Are you here for the long haul? Because you're unlikely to be a Botox millionaire very quickly. That's just not how it goes. There's a lot of people coming into this industry, I think, perhaps for slightly the wrong reasons. They want to be the most famous, the richest, the glitziest. There aren't many of us that are particularly kind of rich and glitzy, is the truth. I think there's a lot of hard graft, a lot of very hard work, putting in the hours, and all of the difficulties that come with starting a new business. So it's tough. So, if you're coming into the industry, be sure you're in it for the long haul. Be ready to do a lot of hard work. And it's not just about the social media profile. I think there's a lot of activity going on social media, which is fantastic. But actually, we do need to deliver. We do need to deliver that experience that I talked about. So focus on the experience, focus on the service and your treatments, and the success should come.
Dr. Askari, this has been an insightful conversation. Your expertise in facial aesthetics and your dedication to natural and refined results really shine through. Before we wrap up, where can our listeners find you if they were to learn more about your work or book a consultation?
Well, we have Askinology, which is in the City of London, and you can find us online. Just Google Askinology. It's askinology.com. And for software, Collumns, spelled COLLUMS, again, is online. Collumns.co is our website address there. We have free demos that you can book via the website. We're very happy to show you how Collumns can help your business.
To everyone tuning in, thank you for joining us on the Aesthetics Today podcast. If you found today's discussion valuable, don't forget to subscribe and follow us on social media for more expert insights. Stay tuned, stay informed, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Tabs. Thank you very much.